Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Not Denmark, Germany, but hey, it's almost the same. Thank you very much. Steve's presentation resonated a lot with me. A lot of the words and things that he talked about, a lot of the concepts you will hear again. And my presentation might be slightly different, a bit more formalized, a bit more static maybe, a bit more bigger also, because Hotjar is a company that now has 70 people that all work remote. And the question that I get a lot of times is, how do you do that? There are a few companies in the startup world that are known to be fully remote or 100% remote. For example, Automatic, that's the WordPress company, Basecamp, Buffer, Zapier, InVision. They're all in the US. Actually, I don't know any startup in Europe that is 100% remote. Hotjar is. They're originally from Malta, and the founders very early knew, very on when they started this company, that they would want to set it up remote, because not only would it fit their lifestyle and the way they wanted to work, but also because Malta would not be the place where they could recruit from. Now I gotta ask, which is it? This the one that I'm gonna be pressing? Arturos? I don't have a clicker. Guys? Oh, it's on the stand. Okay, thank you. All right. Thanks for that. So, what I called this presentation is remote by default. Basically, the title gives it away. This is not a company that transformed itself to be remote. It's not halfway remote. It's fully remote. And just to give you a quick introduction, just quick hands, who knows Hotjar? Heard of Hotjar? Anyone? Okay, so that's a third of everyone in here? Okay, great. You're my support group. In case I get something wrong or whatever, you help me. Started in 2014, launched in 2015, no outside investors, about 800,000 users, about 20,000 paying customers, 550,000 websites have Hotjar on it, profitable from day one. Started with about 4 team members. When I met them for the first time, there were 8, and now it's about 70 team members. I'm not full-time with them. I'm one of their 2 advisors that they have, but I work with them on a monthly basis continuously. Just to, obviously, the question is, what does Hotjar do? Hotjar is a tool, a SaaS tool, that gives you, as a website owner, insights into what your users do on your website, the visitors on your website, what they do. And they do that through various tools, such as heat maps, recordings, funnel analytics, forms, but also feedback tools, such as polls and surveys. And why is that the Hotjar? Because it's all in one, whereas previously, before Hotjar came around, this was something that you would typically get in various tools and not as nice with that kind of design and ease of use as you would with Hotjar. Now we're diving straight in. This is a very, well, it's not a very complicated slide, but when you look at it for the first time, what I'm trying to show here is, this is a slide that we look at every month. It's actually 2 months old, so it's 66 people, team size. But what it's supposed to show you is that we have a very distributed team across mostly Europe, but also the US. We have people all over the place. And it's not only these countries, but it's also the actual locations within these countries that are fascinating. People live in the Dutch countryside. They live in British small towns. They live in, some Americans live in Prague. We have one American who lives in Albania. People live all over the place. And this is one of the messages that obviously Steve talked about, but also I want to talk about. Another thing that I'm very proud of is down here. This is a company that's now been around for almost 4 years. In the startup world, this is a very high retention. 82 people hired over time at Hotjar, and only 16 people have left the company for various reasons. This is one of the top HR retention numbers I've ever seen in the various companies that I've been associated with. So let's talk about remote for a while. Steve talked about remote as a function of co-working spaces and sitting on the beach in Bali. In my view, it's slightly different, but when we look at what we see on BuzzFeed, on Facebook, on all these websites, all these social media, what does remote mean? It tells us usually, you're a digital nomad. Very often you're part-time, you do this for one company and you do that for another company. You're a freelancer or you're independent. You may run your own business, whether it's content writing or a dropship business or something. You typically work at the beach, right? You typically do whatever you want, whenever you want it, and if you're one of the lucky ones, you have passive income. All of that may be true, not necessarily true, could be true. It's not necessarily wrong either, but it's one of those things that in the way we made remote work, it's not the way remote works for us. And first of all, making remote work at scale is really, really hard work. The way I just described remote with all these attributes probably wouldn't work. So you could throw perks at it. Honestly, the perks at Hotjar are great. I got to do a little bit of Hotjar show here, right? So $4,000 home office budget, 2,000 euro a year holiday budget, 2,000 euros a year working together budget, 1,000 euros per year personal development budget, 200 euros a month working space allowance, that's for co-working spaces. The well-being allowance, we have it all. But honestly, that's not what makes it work. It's one of the attributes. It's one reason why we get to hire great people. And personally, in my opinion, also the people that fit with the company really well. Let's go there. I've come up with 10 points why remote works at Hotjar, or how Hotjar has made remote work. And they're not in order of preference, but there is a bit of a higher emphasis on the top ones. So values, I put that really on top because it really is one of the top things that make this company, that put the glue into this company. Then we're going to talk about some of the other aspects. For example, that I think one of the reasons why it works is that it's remote from day one and not at some time in the life cycle of the companies where they transitioned. The fact that everyone is remote, transparency, hiring for remote, and then some others. So let's go there. Any company can make use of strong values. Any company does better when they have strong values. But I think personally, if you run a remote company, especially one that is at a certain size, if you have more than 3 or 4 people, but you have 10, 20, maybe 100 people, then it's absolutely imperative that your company is founded on strong values and led on strong values. And for these values to be true, they can't just come top down, and they cannot be just lip service, but they need to be developed together with the team, and they need to be breathed every day. So this is just to give you a little idea of what the Hotjar values are like, or what they are. Actually, to go back a bit in time, so we had values from the very beginning. It was actually more about 8 or 9 values. And then this year, we did a big project with a consulting firm out of the UK that really analyzed a lot of these things, talked to every team member in the company, and then interviewed everyone and did a selection and a voting and everything. And in the end, it was a bit of streamlined and refined. So number one of the Hotjar values is that we obsess over our users. And this is one of the things that a lot of people say, and personally I work with a couple of companies, but no one does it as good as Hotjar. Which comes down to many things. It comes down to loyalty, that we believe if we obsess about our users, they will be loyal to us, and they will either stay with us for a long time, or they will come back if they intermittently discontinue the service. It's about the value that we create for them, and it's about the wow effect that we create for the users. We want to be bold and move fast. This is one function of that we said we believe that building something quick, like an MVP, at a minimum level of quality and get it out is better than striving for perfection. So good is better than perfection. It's about ruthless prioritization, it's about admitting mistakes, and it's about a sense of urgency vis-a-vis the product and the customer and the delivery. It's about working with respect towards our customers and users, but also our team members. We want to be inclusive. We have absolutely no room for egos and egocentric behavior inside the company. And we also think that it not only serves ourselves, but also it serves as the body of the whole company. Hotjar as a body is a healthy organism, a more healthy organism that way. We build trust with transparency, which again comes down to communication vis-a-vis our users, ourselves, or vis-a-vis ourselves in the company. It's about radical candor. We're very direct. We do not hold back with feedback, but that radical candor needs to come with non-destructive or passive-aggressive sort of criticism. It needs to come with constructive criticism and with the type of feedback that is useful. It needs to be genuine. We all are very much focused on being genuine. No one's wearing a mask or wearing kind of some sort of facade into their work. And we learn by doing every day. We encourage curiosity in our interviews. We ask everyone what they do outside their work, what they have learned in the last year. And that could be anything from professional, but it could also be something personal that we look for. And continuously improving ourselves and the work that we do in the actual product or in the customer success or in the customer service. So these are the values. I think it cannot be underestimated how important this is. If this is not something that is lived by, and we also enforce, then it's not going to work. And you will either hire the wrong people or you will retain the wrong people. Remote from day one is one of the, typically when people ask me, so what does it work at Hotjar, remote? I say one of the top things is remote from day one. Companies that go from, oh yeah, we have an office, and then there's 2 guys that are remote, and we're encouraging more people to be remote. I don't know. It may work. I don't want to judge, but I haven't seen it work. So they started the company from scratch with a remote culture. There's no conversion from a legacy office culture. And I have a very, very telling picture here. It's a company that I love, but does that look like remote from day one? It doesn't, right? This is an office-based culture where you have a couple of people in the office, and then there is me working with them from remote. So this is what it looks like in Hotjar, right? Now, obviously, this is also more people, but that's not the point. The point is everyone is where they are. And actually, they actually have a small office in Malta, but that is just because, you need to have an office address, so you might as well have an office where you could, sit for a day if you wanted to, but no one has to, and no one actually does. But the point is, even when people are there, they will, and they get on a phone, on a Zoom call, then they actually do still, each one gets on their own screen, and you don't have people sitting in their own screen. And another thing that is really telling, what's the one thing that you notice on all of these people? Is there anyone, something comes up? Something that you recognize? Glasses? As opposed to these guys. What is it? Everyone with a headset. Have you ever noticed that when you're on a call and you have 2 or 3 people in a room, that there's always an echo, there's always background noise, there's always something, someone is coughing, and someone's playing with their pen and it falls down. There's always some distraction. Here, it just doesn't happen. Everyone has a professional headset and is focused on what on the call, right? And not on people in the room interrupting you. So this is one of these tiny things that just makes it work. Another one which kind of goes with remote from day one, but is the flip side of that coin is everyone is remote. There's no us and them. It's not like me there or 3 other people being remote and then the rest in the office. The default culture is remote. It requires a certain set of tools, obviously, which everyone has now. It's not a science anymore really, but behavioral aspects, and we'll get to that. Everyone is long-term and full-time. This is something that is very important. We don't really have part-timers. I'm literally the only one who is part-time as an advisor at Hotjar. Everyone else is 100% focused on Hotjar and full-time. I think that is one of the main distinctions. Also, when you look at other companies that work with remote people, where very often they're part-timers. And the people who live in Malta are actually employed by the company, technically, in employment, whereas everyone else is a consultant or contractor, whatever you want to call it. The point is, there's absolutely no distinction between the two. Everyone has the same perks, the same salaries, everything is the same. There's no different kind of treatment. It is just simply a technicality to us. So now, this is the point where when we go look at the perks again, it helps, and you see, wow, now if you think of everything that I've told you right now for 70 people, and you look at it, and you say, okay, you have a fully remote working environment, 40 days of planned leave, which in the US it's insane, right? Typically you have like 7 days or something. And you have all these perks that are listed there, the home office budget, the holiday budget, etc. And then all of a sudden you start looking at it and you're like, wow, this company seems to know what they're doing and something seems to work right. So let's look at a couple more things. Transparency. Again, any company should or could do with transparency. I think if you want to create a remote culture that works and that is striving, you need to be transparent. Like almost 100%. Whether it is the accessibility to the leadership team, whether it's monthly reporting and planning sessions, which includes full disclosure of financials of the company, how much money is in the bank account, what are we spending on labor this month, etc. It's extremely well documentation of processes in the company, whether it's onboarding, hiring, culture and value expectations, whatever. Our management framework is V2MOM, which you know from Salesforce. These are the things that if you don't, if this just comes top down, may work. But if it's not transparent in terms of on an ongoing basis, very hard to make remote work because of that distance that you have, or that implied distance, which you can bridge, but it's something that's still perceived. So again, any number is transparent. The only thing that we don't publish, some companies do that, is salaries internally. So that's the only thing. There is a bandwidth which is published. Everyone knows they're within that bandwidth, but within that bandwidth we're not disclosing salaries. Honestly, it's not a big deal, but it's one of those things where we said, okay, we'll just stop there short of that. Probably one of the top things to make remote work is you actually hire people who can work remote. Not only who want to work remote, but who can work remote, as in they have the ability to work remote. This is something that very often gets mixed up because you think, hey, anyone can work remote. It's not true. A lot of people just simply, not only do they like the atmosphere of an office and the banter and the chit-chat and everything, or the whole surrounding of having people, but some people, they want that, but they are not able to do it. And so in Hotjar, what we look for is to find people who want it and who are able and obviously have the skill set for the required role. And there's a 5-step hiring process in Hotjar that's optimized to primarily figure out what the ability to work remote is and the culture fit with Hotjar. I'm not going to go into every step there, but this is something that we have fine-tuned over the years. We will still further fine-tune it. We've actually looked at it recently, how we can make it more scalable, because it takes a lot of time. It takes also a lot of time for the candidate. We have approximately 6-week hiring process. The most important part is probably the task, which is point 4, which basically means that we give everyone who's a candidate a task to do. And this is a workload that is real work. It's not something made up, some hypothetical work. It's real work that needs to be completed. It's a manageable piece. It's usually about 1 or 2 days of full-time work that can be spread over 2 weeks, which basically means they can do it in evenings or on weekends, and it's paid for because we don't want to rip anyone off, and we want to be appreciative of your time. So that means they have the time to do this task. They get paid for it, and the work will actually be used. Even if, and only 2 out of 10 people who get admitted to a task actually then also get an offer. One of the most important parts of that task is, so in case anyone ever wants to apply, one of the most important things is, this is a little goodie for you, is the communication with the team while you're doing the task. You get admitted to, it used to be HipChat, now it's Slack that we use. You get admitted to other systems that you may need for the job, for that particular task. And how you communicate with the team, when you communicate with the team, and what kind of feedback you look for is exactly what we're looking for, because that tells us whether you can work remote or you can't, in addition to the video interview before and all these things. This is really important. So I made this is one of my new additions here. So it's a very small overlap in the Venn diagram, right? The ability to work remote, wanting to work remote, the culture fit, and obviously actually also the skill set for that role, which, considering all being equal, is still a very small part of people that can actually get. So Hotjar has about 800 applicants per month, and we make 2 offers. I know, don't tell me. Hiring pace, there we are. So I've worked as a VC. I've seen a lot of companies with very good funding, very high growth numbers, very fast hiring also. Unfortunately, too often, I've seen it not work out. And this is also one of the reasons why I'm so much in love with Hotjar and other companies that have found the hiring pace. And in the case of Hotjar, it's about 2 employees per month that they add to the team. And there's various reasons for that. One is the team needs to be able to absorb new team members. New joiners need to soak in the culture and the values, and productivity needs to be maintained. We've had a time, approximately middle of last year, where we've added a lot of team members very quickly, and where all of a sudden our director of engineering said, we need to put a stop on this because right now I don't have the productivity actually that we need. I have too many new people. And this is something where, let's call it a bit of a wake-up call, where we said, okay, we're going to step a bit on the brakes here and take this slower. So, and 2 employees per month is now the pace where we're found to be perfect. There's some hard boundaries on how to make remote work at Hotjar. This is also something that we instituted very early on. It may go a bit against the principle of unlimited freedom, but it works for us. So one thing is we only hire within the time zones of East Coast US and Israel in Europe, which basically means Bali, it's not going to work. Sorry. There is actually, there is a rule that says that up to a month you can be outside of your of these core time zones. So if you want to live in San Francisco for a while or in Bali, that's fine, but that's up to a month. Because one of the things that we discovered is that total asynchronicity doesn't really work. You still need some overlap where productivity works best. And this is within these time zones, because then you have these core working hours where everyone needs to be online. No matter what you do at Hotjar, it doesn't really matter. You need to be online, and that is noon to 3 p.m. CET. Also, all our scheduling and calendaring is on CET, because Malta is in CET, and we said this is our, the navel of the company. And so these core working hours, then if you take that extended, these people in these extreme time zones, they need to make that self-work, which is not a problem. And if for a while you want to move outside of that framework, that's fine, but not forever. Otherwise, there's absolutely no discrimination where you live within these time zones. You could live in South Africa in the countryside, You could live in the Scottish Highlands. We don't care. Some of the processes and tools. This is everyday fare now. Slack works for short messaging now for us. It used to be HipChat. Discourse for long form. I love Discourse personally. We put a lot of emphasis on employee satisfaction and feedback tools to really understand what's happening. 15.5 is what we use for that. We work on a weekly sprint schedule. Every week on Friday, we have the weekly demo. Every team demos what they were working on, whether it's something technical or even something in customer success. We have monthly bonfires where people bring out topics that they want to talk about, or the CEO talks to the company, or the leadership talks to the company. Now that we have a certain size and people start not knowing each other anymore, we're probably going to introduce something like virtual coffee chats, where you have like a random, you matched up with a random person, and then you just have a 20-minute chat on something other than work with someone you haven't met before in the company. Otherwise, we have a lot of interaction on HipChat and now Slack, which I personally prefer HipChat better. Is the kitchen channel, which is basically everything but work. And that is, it's amazing how much action and interaction is in that. So, does it all work without face-to-face? No, it doesn't, but this is one or two highlights per year, 2 company meetups, one in the summer, one in the winter, and this is a couple pictures from our most recent one in Malta. The next one is now in Tenerife, which is 4 days work and social. Actually, primarily work, more than half is work. We added up the hours just to make sure. But it's barely more than half. And this is one of the top events for the company and for everyone. In addition to that, and this is some of the smaller stuff, we also have departmental meetups. But this is, again, once or twice a year only. We have a work together budget. We say, if you make the case, we don't want people to like clinch or stick together, and develop their own little thing. You need to be public about it, and you could say, hey, I want to work with John in Sweden for a week together in a co-working space or something like that. Point 3, everyone gets a key to the office lounge. This is something that we did for a while. We're not doing it anymore because 70 people is just simply, it's just become too impractical. But in the very beginning and for a while, what we did is that everyone got a key to the office lounge in Malta, even though the chance that they would ever show up there is virtually nil. And this is something that very early showed everyone that you're part of the company, even though you're in the U.S. We had a guy in Minnesota, not Minnesota, sorry, it was in Buffalo, I think, Buffalo. And when he got the key, it was very touched because, wow, I've never worked remote for a company and they gave me a key to the office. Something I might have mentioned before, no discrimination in salary versus cost of living. Some companies do that. They have a formula where they say if you live in San Francisco, you get 2x, and if you live in, I don't know, the Midwest, you get 1x. We don't do that for various reasons. We don't want to discriminate or judge where you live. We don't actually want to get bogged down in the calculation of that. I mean, how do you compare the Portuguese countryside versus a Polish big city? It's probably almost the same level of living or cost of living, right? This is something that is very unique about Hotjar. One other small thing, every newbie who joins, new team member, introduces themselves with 10 fun facts about me, or 10 things you would never have thought about me. We have one channel in Slack that is only about sharing your office setup. You can geek out over your office setup, what kind of monitor, what kind of thing, speaker here, and this and that. Salary and cost of living twice. And these are the things that make it work. Now, I was a bit big and grandiose in the beginning about remote work solving some of the problems. Actually, Steve gave a much better speech about that than I could ever do, but these are some of the points that I came up with. And honestly, I think about this every day because I work from home too. And I have so much less distraction. I hate the commute going anywhere. I did that for years. I love the focus on work. I love the ability to actually go out on walking meetings. I do that all the time. I walk around the park in the area where I live while I'm on conference calls. And then again, I get on the computer to do actual stuff. And that, together with the adaptability to family life and the associated also mental health, is something that is very dear to my heart, because I was in that situation. I had 2 kids. My kids are now 10 and 12, like very toddlers. You know, I wanted to be at home and help, but at the same time, I was in a job that required 50, 60 hours worth of work per week. And that, to get that both balanced out, is really, really hard. So, anyway, coming to the end, the result of that, we did a larger survey last year. And this is what one of the team members said: I know my colleagues at Hotjar better than any of the colleagues I had in my previous office-based jobs. And this is something that still touches me to this day, because to get that right and to get to that level of you know, commitment to the company, but also knowing your colleagues really well, is hard work, and that's the reward for it. Thank you very much. And I know time's up. And I'm between you and basically going home or having a beer. But if anyone, any questions right now, I think we might have time for one question. And if not, you can grab me downstairs.
Yeah, I would support grabbing downstairs as we are super behind the schedule. But thank you so much. It was amazing, and you deserve a